Hello, welcome to the Sound on Sound People and Music Industry Podcast channel with me, Nick Rothwell. This episode is all about the 2025 Guthman Musical Instrument Competition, and I'll be talking to Jeff Albert, Associate Professor and Interim Chair of the School of Music at Georgia Institute of Technology, and with Paul McCabe, Senior Vice President of Research and Innovation at Roland's Future Design Lab. Okay, so I'm joined by Jeff Albert of Georgia Tech and Paul McCabe of Roland. So thanks for joining us. So you're in strange time zones. So we have got Paul, you're in LA, is that right? Okay.
That's right, very near LA.
Good morning to you. And Jeff, you're in Atlanta.
Atlanta, so it's just after lunchtime here.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. And we're here to talk about the Guthman Prize and just kind of see where the conversation takes us, because there's all sorts of different interesting directions I think this might go in, but let's see. Maybe we should kick off with some quick kind of intros, biogs. So should start with you, Jeff. Do you want to kind of give some background to yourself as an artist, as an academic, and maybe give us some input about Georgia Tech, because we may not know a great deal about the institution.
Sure. My name's Jeff Albert. I'm the interim chair of the School of Music at Georgia Tech. I'm in my second year at Georgia Tech. I lived in New Orleans for many years before that. My native musical habitat is as a trombone player. And I came up playing jazz, and as my taste got weirder, I realized I could make more weird jazz records that few people would buy if I didn't have to pay people to work on them. So my intro to the tech world was from making my own records, and then I realized I could make more weird music if I got my computer to help me, which sort of got me into computer music making, which eventually led to an academic career, which got me to Georgia Tech. At Georgia Tech, we have music technology degrees. They're not traditional performance degrees like many conservatories and music schools. Our graduates tend to work more in the tech sector than the music industry sector. And so the Guthman competition is a really fascinating way to sort of show the overlap of what we do. Georgia Tech's well known for creating scientists and engineers, but in the School of Music, we also engage with the personal expression and music and creativity. And so the Guthman competition is a really good way of looking at that, of having people who are making new instruments using, with the goal of that personal expression, but using the scientific and technological tools. So that's why we host the competition, and sort of how it fits into what we do. Okay, I was going to pick up on that because it's an institute of technology, and yet you've got a school of music. So how does that fit culturally? Is that a good fit? Is it a productive one? Is it serendipitous? We're always working at it. No, it's a good fit. It's kind of nice to have some space to yourself on campus. It's fun to be the place where the creative, crazy people hang out. I shouldn't say crazy people. That's a bit of it. We're not all crazy. Only some of us. But it's also great to be a creative person in a space with access to so much technological knowledge. It's really great if one of us comes up on something in our research that we're like, I'm not really sure how to solve this problem. There are experts around us who know those answers. So just being with that many people with that much access to deep knowledge in machine learning and electrical engineering and all of these other spaces that sort of come into what we do, being colleagues with those sort of world level experts is really great.
Okay, and I guess we could go off in a whole other direction here and talk about artists who make their art versus artists who also make their own tools for their art. And I guess you're well placed here to have tools and tool makers on hand to help the creative types.
Sure, both in the same place. And my personal approach is I only want to make the tool if someone hasn't already made it. Mm-hmm. I build systems for myself to make music with, but I'm just as happy if someone else has built a system that already does it. I'm very happy to make music with their system.
Okay, we're going to come on to that. I've got in my little notes here talking about people making instruments from themselves versus things that might become products, but we can kind of loop back to that and get onto it in due course. Okay, so Paul, you're with, it says here, Roland Future Design Lab. Can you give us a bit of introduction to your background and what the Design Lab does?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Roland Future Design Lab is my current role with Roland. I lead this group. I'll give a brief description of it, and then I'll just give a little bit of my background as well. But where in Roland, our product research and development is usually focused on a 1 to 5 year window with a really intense focus on the 1 to 3 year window, and designing and building and delivering products and applications and solutions for that time range. But from a company whose kind of marketing slogan is "We design the future," needless to say, there's a charge to look out and past that. And that is very difficult when there's such an intense focus on this, we'll say, the 3 year window. And so Roland Future Design Lab was established last year to be that group that's out on the frontier. And we don't build finished things. That's not our charge. Our responsibility is to, starting with research, we try and understand the world around us and forecast trends and observe trends. If there's things that we think are interesting for Roland, usually opportunity, but I have to say that, perhaps it might be something that could present risk that we should be more aware of. Then we engage with research, and we've got lots of different modes of research that we can apply to understand and then to propose and then validate our thinking. If we lean into something where there's opportunity, then our next typical course would be to build a proof of concept of some sort. But maybe different from some approaches, our idea is build proofs of concept that we actually put out in the public and get feedback from the public, particularly when it comes to disruptive tech like artificial intelligence. We're really committed to not making assumptions on what artists are going to find helpful or intimidating or threatening. And so particularly when we're in this world of frontier tech, we want to make sure as early on as possible we're getting feedback from those that might be the target people to use that tech in their creative workflows. And then once we've validated something through this proof of concept phase and we feel confident about it, then we would package it up as a proposal and bring it back into the product R&D, propose it to them, and then help them to integrate it in their kind of 1 to 3, 1 to 5 year product roadmap. We do have a proof of concept in the world right now. It's called Tone Explorer, and this is a neural network-based web application that studies MIDI phrases that can either be played in real time into the app or imported as a MIDI file, and then we'll propose tones that match, as determined by the neural network, that match this phrase, and presents it in some really interesting interfaces. And typical of what our thinking is around AI, we're thinking about things that help and support and enhance and augment all of those great words rather than displace human in the loop in the creative workflows. And we think that this is a problem that many people have. They're surrounded by potentially tens of thousands of sounds working in a DAW environment. And how do I possibly wade through and find just those perfect matches to the music that I'm writing? So that's a little bit about Roland Future Design Lab. It's not just AI. It's we're looking at immersive experiences. We're looking at connectivity. We're looking at accessibility. We're charged with leading digital transformation from a technology perspective inside the company as well. So lots of really interesting things to keep us thinking all around the clock. Before that, I've done a variety of jobs. I've been with Roland for over 30 years. My background is product. I'm a synth player, composer, sound designer, sequencer type guy whose actually first instrument was trumpet. And then that twist and turns led me into the world of electronics in high school, and that's kind of been my center point. I've served as a product specialist, a product manager, a marketing manager, a leader of global customer experience. I was the CEO of our Canadian company for almost 10 years before moving with my family to Los Angeles and starting to work more directly for Roland Corporation Japan, which is who I work for now.
Okay, and I guess the follow-on question is, how did you get involved with the Guthman Prize?
I was approached in a dark alley.
Happens to all of us.
It was an outreach. I actually don't remember exactly how the invitation formed. Actually, no, I do. Sorry, it was a gentleman named Gil Weinberg, who is on the faculty of Georgia Tech and does some fascinating work that we could easily lose 5 hours of conversation to. Gil and I had communicated by email, and then we met at a NAMM show, one of the smaller NAMM shows just post-COVID, and kind of immediately clicked. Gil's just one of those fascinating people that you're just happy to know, and I could tell that right away. And either then or shortly thereafter, he talked to me about the Guthman Musical Instrument Competition. I'd heard about it, but I'd never fully leaned into it. As soon as I started looking at it, I was just captivated by the story, and I couldn't believe that something like this existed, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't been a fan of it for 20 years. But in any case, he'd said, would you ever be interested in perhaps participating as a judge? And I said, sure. What does that mean? And we communicated a little bit more, and then the opportunity came for this year, and I am beyond happy that I said yes, that the invitation came, that I accepted it, and spent about half a week just in an amazing environment.
I was going to ask about the judging process. Were you actually there in person, seeing the instruments actually in the flesh, as it were?
Absolutely, and now being through this experience, I don't think this is possible to do remotely. These are musical instruments. They're creatures, and you need to see them, touch them, smell them, play them. I think pretty much all of the instruments, all of the judges played. We got our hands on them as well. You need to just let these happenstance conversations happen with the creators of these instruments, because often they're so kind of focused in their world, they're actually not accustomed to telling the story of what led them to this work of art that they've created. And so you have to just be patient with that conversation and let it steep and come back and visit it again, as we did many times over the couple of days that we were kind of in this really concentrated environment with the creators of these instruments, and that was really the only way I think that we could bring ourselves to the point where we could possibly award prizes. Jeff could talk more about this, but the 10 entries that were there were already winners. They'd already stood out from a list of entries, and so there was already achievement. And it was our job to try and find those stories that were exceptional in some way. It was really hard, but it was also absolutely joyous to go through the process as well.
I guess you're meeting lots of individuals who have been kind of toiling away for years on their own personal ideas, so kind of pulling out of them a story, a narrative that you can kind of then contextualize must be a bit of a challenge as well.
It is, and it's I think that's, again, perhaps Jeff can speak a little bit more to this, but there's such a spectrum of instrument builders that are represented there. You absolutely right. There's, for example, the Molitor, this beautifully hand-built. The judges, we said, this instrument, what's so remarkable about it is it looks like an ancient instrument that is brand new, and you don't often find yourself in the presence of something like that. And we saw some video of the 200 plus hours that go into just building one instrument, and that's not considering all of the design iterations that led up to that. But then you've got other builders where it was clear that a lot of their work kind of emanated from platforms like Max, and where they were prototyping sound generation and signal flow and whatnot in Max, and then it was kind of, okay, now how do I want to interact with this physically, and kind of everything in between. That is, I think, what we were able to experience.
Yeah, we may come back to that, but it seems, looking at the winners, as a mix of digital audio, electronic processing, acoustic processing, and it's really kind of all over the shop.
Sure, we get things that are completely acoustic instruments to things that are completely digital instruments. And we also often, in the finalists, get a sort of a range. We had a few this year that are already in the early sort of commercial stages. They're starting to commercialize the thing. A couple of these you can buy if you know how to find them. And then one of the ones that got a commendation from the judges was like literally built by this young man in his garage with, leftover laptop parts and things. So we sort of get both ends of those extremes. And I'll tell you a little more about the process we were talking about. So we had 3 judges for the finals weekend, Paul and King Britt and Letitia Sonami. And we try to balance when we choose the judges. Gil and I said, Gil Weinberg, who Paul mentions, the director for the Center for Music Technology at Georgia Tech. So he's part of this process as well. And we sit down and think about, like, okay, who do we know? What would make an interesting judging panel? We try to balance artistic practitioners and academics and industry folks, although there's always overlap, right? Like Paul's here as an industry person, but he's also an artistic practitioner. King Britt teaches at University of California, San Diego, but everyone really probably knows him more as an artist than as an academic. And Letitia also lives across those spaces. But the original submissions, which happen in the fall, we usually get 60 to 100 submissions. And those are narrowed down to the finalists by a group of Georgia Tech faculty and also some Atlanta area musicians sometimes. But then the final, and that's all done from video and online submissions. And Paul's right, it's very difficult to like really get a sense of what the things are from the video. And then when the finalists come in, we have the outside judges come. And it's funny, even having chosen them from the videos, when they show up and you see them in person, sometimes you realize, oh, that's a very different, the actual essence of that instrument is different from what I thought it was from the video presentation.
Okay, so making the face-to-face really an important part of the process.
Yeah, or hearing it in more of a context, more than just a couple of minutes.
For me, one of the things that really stood out was how the personality of these instruments actually evolved even within those 2 days that we were together in the different settings they were put in, because they were workshopped. We had kind of stand-up, personalized demos, and that was the first day. And you've kind of finished that, and you kind of, okay, I think I've got the kind of the lay of the land here. But then you get to the evening concert, and now you see them in that performance context, and now you're not only seeing the personality of the instrument really start to come out, but you're seeing the personality of the builder, the musician that's been chosen to help them showcase the instrument in performance as well. And the judges were sitting together in the audience, and there were 3 or 4 times where we kind of looked at each other. We're going, wow, we were all impressed with some different dimension of an instrument that stood out in that live performance concert venue context.
Okay, I'm going to roll back a bit, I think, because I'd like to get a sense of the start of the prize, really, which was, 27 years ago as a keyboard prize, and get a sense of how it's evolved and what things you're seeing now with the current shortlisted prize winners compared to what they were like a few years ago, and whether you got some sort of sense of how this craft of instrument making is kind of slowly changing. Could we kind of get some historical context? Would that be possible?
Sure. So I'll give the quick history lesson. It started in the 1990s. Richard Guthman was a Georgia Tech graduate, and he wanted to give back to the Institute and support music. His wife, Margaret, was a pianist. So it started as a piano competition, and there was a jazz category and a classical category, and it was doing fine. I think the family really wanted something that would sort of stand out in the music world, and there are lots of piano competitions. So standing out as a piano competition wasn't all that easy. At the time, our music technology degrees were developing, and so someone had the idea, well, what if we make it a musical instrument competition? It's, what we're doing. We have students building new technology. What if we showcase all the great new musical instrument ideas from around the world? So in the mid-2000s, it made that shift from piano competition to musical instrument competition. And it's really taken off since then. I don't know that I can speak real well to trends, because I feel like it's a little like fashion. Things sort of come and go. There are often broad categories that you see. It seems like every year we have a magnetic field instrument. And the winner this year, the Chromaplane, was one of those. And I will say that one, I think, was the sort of most musically responsive and elegantly assembled version of magnetic field instruments that we've seen. And there are also, we had a lot of, if I had to pick a trend for this year, there was a lot of interest in microtonal instruments. A lot of the things that came in had we're looking for expressive ways to get between the equal temperament that we're used to. That seemed to be the trend for me this year.
Yeah, I think on that there are quite a lot of kind of trends and technologies helping with that. When we first got MPE, polyphonic expression, that meant we could microtune. When we first got keyboards where they could respond to per key pitch, that was kind of opening the door to this kind of microtoning or microtuning. And, after the tyranny of decades of the piano keyboard, it's kind of good that we're getting there.
As a trombonist, I've been playing in the cracks for years, but
Okay, and also I was looking through the past winners, and we got Teenage Engineering are there with their lovely little boutique systems, and Raleigh. So I interviewed Roland quite a few months ago. Again, his interest was essentially taking a conventional keyboard and making it responsive with per key response, continuous control and tunings. And we can kind of come back to that because there were particular things that Roland was trying to achieve to make his instrument into a commercial success. But in terms of the winners here, you picked up on the Chromaplane. I think that was probably my favourite as well. It just seemed such a rich, organic sound. And I believe they actually are shipping them now to, did they have done a Kickstarter campaign or something similar? Because people are starting to receive them.
I think they did, yeah.
Yes, they did, and they're actually working on, and I think they even performed a little bit on the second iteration of the instrument, which moved more towards a sampling and sample playback as a sound source, as opposed to the analog engine that's in the first generation of the Chromaplane.
Right. That I was trying to work out, because it looks like it has an audio input, so you could feed it arbitrary recordings, and it would then process them in the analog domain.
Yeah, that's right. We can't speak too much yet about the PCM version. We asked some questions and got a little bit of understanding, but yeah, it's got multiple audio inputs that presumably allow for some real-time processing as you're performing on the electromagnetic field surface with the isomorphic zones on the top of the instrument as well. And yeah, we were able to get, in the judging process, we were able to refine the list of 10 to a list of 5 or 6 with pretty reasonable agreement between the judges, reasonable agreement with agreement between the judges. Going from there is what really took the time, but Chromaplane eventually did rise up as that instrument that really pushed and checked all of the boxes of this rubric that we created to try and standardize our conversation, if you will, across all of these wide variety of different instruments. It presented kind of a new form of expression. It was musical. It was compelling when we all wanted to try it. When we saw it first performed, every one of us wanted to, I want to try that. There was an immediacy to the interface that was really intriguing. And then as soon as you try it, we wanted to try and get better at that. And that was one of the things that we were looking for, was, does the instrument kind of propose, or does it suggest a kind of a path to virtuosity that will keep you engaged with it and wanting to continue to improve your skills with it. And Chromaplane, they all showed signs in each of these areas, but Chromaplane for us really stood out.
So one shout out I'm going to give is for the dinosaur head modeling, because I think that was just completely bonkers and it sounded great.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm sure you have something to say about that. I can certainly speak from the judge's perspective as well.
I want to tell your story, Paul. I love when they announced the awards at the end of the concert, Paul really framed them really well. And one of the things he said about this instrument was, I never really thought I could develop empathy with something that lived millions of years ago. But the idea of imagining what this possibly could have sounded like really made me feel some empathy for the thing. And I thought that was a really deep way to look at it. And on the surface level of, I would love it for all of the 8-year-olds in Atlanta to come hear the dinosaur and get excited about making cool things. It also is it makes you consider history in a way that we wouldn't do otherwise. And the idea of using the expression of a musical instrument as a way to really make us examine our humanity on a deeper level. I think that's the most important thing we can do with what we as musicians and inventors and technologists have.
Yeah, and we talk about journeys to the final result. The research that Courtney reviewed and assembled and considered on the path to building this instrument was extraordinary. It was actually quite funny. All the judges were commenting that clearly she was the smartest person in the room, and she in conversation she would start talking to us about these 12-syllable dinosaur names as though it was a cup of coffee, and we'd all be nodding our heads saying, "Oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, of course that." And she just did it so innocently that that was quite charming. But the instrument itself, as Jeff was saying, there's all three of the winners. We talked about them occupying a different space in history, and the dinosaur choir, pre-human history. And as Jeff was saying, for me, there was really two narratives to this. There was two stories of the instrument. There was this story that compelled you to look back, and certainly for me, who as a kid, and as I'm sure many of us did, you grow up with a fascination for fire trucks and dinosaurs and astronauts, in some balance, and certainly I was really interested in dinosaurs and knew all of the names of the 10 dominant the dinosaur types and whatnot, but we also grow up with what Hollywood has taught us they sound like, which is pitched down pitched down lions and tigers and later lots of processing and whatnot, all to kind of help elevate this ferocity. But in reality, as we learned, and as Courtney always was very careful to do, she says because she would say, we'll never know definitively because we can't restore the tissues, the tissue and the muscles that went into all of what becomes the voice box of a dinosaur. So we have to postulate and we hypothesize, and this hypothesis has a lot of research to back it. But as she says, it comes with some controversy as well. But maybe dinosaurs sounded much more like birds, very loud, very large, at times potentially very angry birds. I caught myself saying that, but I was already committed, so I just had to go with it. Yeah. In any case, as I said to her, I said, well, I don't think I'll ever watch Jurassic Park in the same way again, because my own impression of that era is being, rewritten as I speak with you. But then the other narrative, of course, is using this as a musical instrument and thinking about the idea of being able to inject your own personality and your own dynamics and your own expression into this dinosaur head, and have it vocalize something that's a reflection of what you're trying to ingest, what you're trying to impart on it, is just remarkable. And she talked about the desire to have choirs. She has ideas for different dinosaur heads. That was another interesting thing, is that it looked a little bit hodgepodge. It absolutely wasn't. The base was, very much the base of the entire system, and then this 3D printed dinosaur head attached to it, and there's a modularity to it where in her plans she intends to develop other dinosaur heads and other models for them that will run and allow you to perform as well. So yeah, really.
Yeah, I think I was really impressed that it does seem to be a fully formed, high quality academic study as well as a practical exercise.
Well, and really multiple studies. Just the amount of research that she considered to build her own research and her own theories and propositions was, again, now she's only scratching the surface as she tried to describe it to us.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier about judging rubrics. I'd like to kind of end on that, and I guess end on a slightly more philosophical discussion maybe about, with a competition like this, as I said at the beginning, you get kind of solo inventors, performers who turn up with their instruments, and they may not be interested in anybody else being able to play them as long as they can express themselves. And I guess you get people doing Kickstarters because they think there's something about what they've done that generalizes or is more accessible or is potentially more commercial. So I'm kind of interested in how you feel about that spread from the one person's solo instrument to something that could be generalized, and whether these things should be easy to play or whether they require virtuosity. Does that kind of come into your judging rubrics, or is that something you can kind of expand on?
Let me preface that with, people often ask me, well, what are the rules? To which I respond, creativity has no rules. So it is really hard to say, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. And the way it gets judged from year to year does vary some, given who the jury is and the sort of what they bring to it. Although we do have, Gil usually sits the judges down and says, these are some ways it's been thought about in the past. Now take that to use. I will say we had a panel with the judges where I asked Letitia how she thinks about her instruments, and other people playing them, because she's built the Lady's Glove and the Spring Spire and all these things. And she was very quick to say, I build these for my personal expression. I do not think about other people playing them. But obviously some of the finalists, are commercializing these things, so they do. So I just wanted to put out that there's a variety of answers there, and we try not to be proscriptive in saying to win the competition or to make the finals, it has to be X. It can be very personal. It can also be very general. So, Paul, you can maybe talk about how y'all thought about it this year a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I am a systems and structure guy, partly because I think, and especially now with Roland Future Design Lab, the field of possibilities is immense. And somehow we have to find ways to bring some order to things so that we can determine priorities, areas of interest, levels of investment of time and energy and money and what have you. We have to bring some structure to this. And I'd like to think that that's one of the things that I bring to Roland Future Design Lab. I was also, and I think there's probably a hint in here, one of the earliest kind of pop music band. Actually, before that, when I was studying classical music, it was always, I was interested in any kinds of music that reflected counterpoint, the different species of counterpoint. So all of these, kind of interconnected lines and interdependent lines was always really interesting to me. Stands to reason that one of the first pop bands that I fell in love with was Kraftwerk. And so kind of, if I just leave that there, you probably understand how I got to a spreadsheet for this competition as well. But having said that, Gil did sit us down and say, last year, in fact, the 2024 competition, somebody did develop a bit of a rubric that I'll share with you. You don't have to use it. It was interesting and it did inform some of our thinking, but I'd also just not knowing how this was even going to work when we got together with each judge, just kind of work on their own, and then we'd come together and hash it out and somehow come up with a result, or would we be very, very collaborative? What was so great was I think the combination of King and Letitia and myself was really, it was really almost a perfect combination because of the different areas of thinking that we represented, yet we were able, there was a nexus that sat between us, that we were all very comfortable with each other, and disagreement was never really disagreement. It was just something to consider, something else to consider. So I really loved the process of working with them. Regardless, I'd in the days leading up to the competition, as I've got up this swirling mass of how we think about this, I codified it down to I think it was 10 different dimensions that if I'm just thinking about this is what I'll probably try and focus on. And then I shared those with the other judges, and we made a few changes, but we ultimately kind of adopted that to give ourselves a bit of a common operating system for the conversation. And I'll, if it's of interest, I can share those with you quickly. We thought about, is the instrument approachable and intuitive? And if you go back to that conversation about the Chromaplane, that as an example, but not just the Chromaplane, but that was one instrument where we all felt we want to try that. We understand the basic performance mechanics without touching it. We want to try it, and there was that kind of compelling moment. And in those first moments with it, is that kind of initial onboarding? Can I make some progress quickly, and feel like I have an opportunity to make music with this instrument? Is the instrument evocative? Does it inspire virtuosity? And so again, when I was talking about the Chromaplane, does it kind of compel you to want to get better at it? And can you imagine being on a journey of improvement with the instrument over time? Of course, is it expressive? It's a very wide term, but all of the instruments were expressive in their own ways. All 10 entries, obviously. Is there some form of sonic innovation that the instrument embodies? Am I hearing something new? And that doesn't mean to be like an entirely new form of synthesis, but is the combination of the sound and the performance expression that I'm hearing create something that's new. And so that was one. Is it versatile? Is it a one-trick pony? And what I'm hearing is about what it is, and it might be hard to imagine a 2-hour concert with this, or to hear it set in different musical contexts, or is it potentially musically adaptable? And can I imagine, for example, different players developing their own creative voice that I can hear through the instrument? Is it welcome? Does it solve a problem? And there were a couple of instruments that were problem solvers. The Modumidi was, Emily started that, and we talked about her as being on a mission. She really had no intention of building an instrument that people could buy. She wanted to create a platform upon which people could enjoy microtonal music. And she arrived at she didn't know how to build a keyboard. She met friends that could help her do that, and 3D print parts and whatnot. And her intention was to I want to open source this just so that people can have some way that they can try microtonal music. And so that was a problem, an example of a problem solver. Is it beautiful? So much of that early relationship with a musical instrument comes from visual and not what we hear. And I imagine myself playing it. That's what draws me in. I want to hold it. I want to be seen holding it. I want to be associated with this thing. To me, it's beautiful. Is it ergonomic? Can it be held or interacted with physically as a musical instrument? Are the things placed in a way that you can imagine a performance flow being developed? Or is it one where, okay, yeah, all of these pieces are interesting, but I'm having a difficult time imagining how I would actually develop a performance style with it. Quality and craftsmanship, they go without saying, and it even for the instruments that had kind of just been born on the bench. We were looking for signs that there, is what's there. Was there consideration given to it? Is there, from the Roland perspective, something that we're always very cognizant of, and this was Mr. Kakahashi's mandate, was that we never want to put something into a musician's hands that's going to break, because when it breaks, you lose trust in a way that you may never regain. Now, these, with one or two exceptions, these aren't commercially available products, but can we either see the essence of quality and craftsmanship, or can we imagine this being crafted in a way that is going to make it, an enduring, robust instrument? And then the last one was the X factor. Is there something? Is there just something to this? And the Dinosaur Choir being an example of the X factor, where there's these two stories and this idea that this instrument is really causing me to think back to a time and kind of reframe my understanding of it, is one example.
Well, it seems to me, from just looking at the 10 finalists, you've got a huge range there, from individual instruments through to things that are kind of on the verge of becoming commercials. It seems like that rubric has kind of stood you well in terms of giving you good quality submissions from a broad range of backgrounds and approaches.
Well, yeah, and again, that wasn't used to evaluate the entries. That was really used when we were there to help us. And we didn't use it in a strict sense. I mean, I did because, again, craft work. I did, but it gave us something as I mentioned, a common operating system. We could talk about these, and it helped us to kind of focus in on what we liked or what we were challenged by in a given entry, and then ultimately to rank them, which was really difficult.
Super. Well, I'm aware that time is rolling on, but it's been a fascinating talk, and as I say, given that we've got Teenage Engineering and Rowley have kind of come through this path, it'd be really interesting to look back in a couple of years and see which of these potential finalists are kind of out there in the world. I've got to say, I've got in my head now an image of a dinosaur skull with a Roland logo planted on the side of it. If you could make that happen for me.
Well, if I could make that happen for me, that would be something of a dream. We'll see. Who knows? Who knows,
indeed, right? Yep. Well, I've got to say, Jeff and Paul, thank you so much. I mean, it's been a long podcast, but it's been a really interesting one. And it's clear there's a lot of really good work going on here, and creative work. And, it's got a good kind of vibe about it. So, thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Thanks for having us, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure entirely.
Thank you for listening. And be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode, where you'll find further information, along with web links and details of all the other episodes. And just before you go, let me point you to the soundonsound.com/podcasts website page, where you can explore what's playing on our other channels. This has been a Project Casio production by me, Nick Rothwell, for Sound on Sound.